Hi everyone and welcome back. I have another brass padlock here. This one's the Burg Wachter boccia. I'm not sure how to say it. Model 45040, made with German engineering. This is another of the Unguttables that I've grubbed to get pictures for the LPU belt app website. So let's pick it. This one's a dimple. Here's the key. Unfortunately, there's 2 zero lifts there. Or at least, I'm pretty sure 5 is a zero lift. I never really touch it. 2, I think might be a minimum lift. It barely needs a whisper. So it's really a 1, 3, and 4 that are the locking pins here. Key works. Key's a bit sticky though. It always was, even before I grubbed it. The pins are a bit odd. I don't often see this sort of pin. You'll see what I'm talking about once we get this open. And I think that's why the key sticks. There's quite a bit of play in the between the key pins and the key pin slots. And the pins kind of tend to jam up, I think. Anyway, tensioning, I put in, which way do I want it? I like this way. Yeah, we'll do that way. Tensioning clockwise, because that's the way it opens. And picking with a multi-pick number 4 flag. There's the profile. Can you see? It's kind of hard to see in it. All right. 1 is springy. 2 kind of felt like it was binding a little bit, but it's springy now. 3 is sort of binding. Now it's springy. 4 is springy. 5 is springy. 2 is springy back to 1. 1 is binding. Springy. 2 is springy. 3 is springy. 4 is binding. It's springy now. 5, springy. Let's go back. 1 is springy. 2 is springy. 3 is binding. 4 is springy. 3. 5 is springy. 2 is binding. Yeah, must be a minimum lift. 1 was binding, and it's open. There are some passive pins in there that line up with these pins. They're opposite the active pins, so really they're facing each other, but those are the passive pin slots. Let's get this gutted. We'll see what's inside. One. Tweezers. There we go. Steel spring. Standard driver. And here's this key pin that I was telling you about. It's got a really wide top, I guess to prevent it falling through falling through into, or too deep into the plug. Once we get the plug out, I'll show you how much play there is between the key pins and the key pin chambers. Two. Two is a standard. Another flat top key pin. Three is a standard. Another steel spring. Four is a standard. And five was a zero lift. I never had to touch it. Or if anything, maybe it set while I was testing it. I'm not sure. But interestingly, five has a spool. One lone spool in this lock, and it's on a zero lift. Or practically zero lift. Anyway, I found that quite strange, but I suppose that's bitting dependent, isn't it? Whoop. Now this is the plug retainer. There is a spring in it, which usually you find a piece of brass rod that's kind of tapered on one end that fits into a slot in the plug. And then underneath this one there is what appears to be a driver pin that actually engages with that slot in the plug. Now there are passives, so let's see if we can squeak this out. And there are the passive pins. Only two of them, but there's 3 cuts in the key. Interestingly. 3 cuts and only 2 pins. And also interestingly, let's push those back down into the plug. You can see they're maybe 1/2 mil below the surface of the plug. And when you put the key in, they don't really extend above the surface of the plug. Well, maybe this one does. But just barely. But I guess it's enough, because when the key isn't, I tested it without the key pins in, without the active stacks in, and it does lock up the plug if the key isn't pushed in all the way. The plug won't turn. So those passive pins, 1, 2, 3, 4, line up with that slot. Is that visible? There's a slot right there for the passives, and then opposite that is the Bible holes for the main stacks. And then there's 2 spring-loaded locking pawls in there. Let's see if I close this up. I've gone and made a mistake. These pawls have flipped around. That's alright, I can fix that. Push this one back into place. Note for anyone who's thinking about grubbing these things is that with these locks that use the locking pawls instead of the ball bearings, where's my light? Here it is. Can you see? You can see those little tabs. Right now they're off center. They should be in the center. When you pull the plug out, it's generally a good idea to make sure the shackle is in the locked position. Otherwise, things get misaligned and it can be a real pain in the butt to get it back into place. That's all right. Oh, I almost had it. There we go. If you can see that now. They're aligned correctly, centered in the bore, in the space for the plug. Anyway, I think that's about it. Let's do a close-up. Oh, something that I noticed on the plug, and I don't know if this is just from the manufacturing process, but on that side of the key pin chambers, there is a pronounced ledge here on each of the chambers, but it doesn't go all the way to this side. And interestingly, the plug turns clockwise, so I don't know if these little ridges play any part, or if they're even there on purpose as a feature, or if that's just an artifact of the milling process. I'm not sure. Probably just a manufacturing remnant. I mean, after all, it is a 40mm brass padlock. It's not crazy high security here. Yeah, let's get these out of the way and go for a close-up on the pins. You can see that one lone spool and the T-shaped key pins and passive pins. 5 standards in 1 spool and 2 passives. The Burg Wachter boccia 40mm brass padlock, picked and gutted. Thanks very much for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.